Hello, and thank you for joining us for this webinar conversation about live facial recognition in Hertfordshire. For those who don't know me, I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hertfordshire, and today's session is designed to provide clear, transparent information about the use of live facial recognition technology in the county. Following a successful pilot before the Christmas period, the constabulary is planning to use live facial recognition more widely across the county, and there are a number of officers from the constabulary who are going to be joining us to explain more about how the technology is going to be used, how it sits alongside other policing tools, and indeed some of the protections and controls built into the system. Public safety is at the heart of this. Live facial recognition is designed to help identify individuals already wanted to the police, people who may pose a risk to the public, people who are wanted for offences. Technology is already used by many police forces across the country, where it has assisted in locating people linked to serious offences. As Police and Crime Commissioner, I support the police in using this technology. Police and Crime Plan sets a clear ambition to reduce crime, catch criminals, keep people safe, and live facial recognition supports all of those aims. And the public also have some levels of support for this technology as well. My office carried out a survey on live facial recognition linked to the pilot that found really strong public support, over 80% of respondents to that survey being in favour of the use of live facial recognition in Hertfordshire. But how the technology is used is really important, and it's crucial that live facial recognition is used in a way that's proportionate, responsible, and has clear controls in place on how data is used and around the kind of legal and scrutiny frameworks, and we'll be hearing more about that. I've also discussed this with the Chief Constable through my regular accountability and performance meetings as well. And we know that the use of live facial recognition technology does bring some questions and sometimes concerns, and that's part of the reason this session has been organised, to help explain how it works, what it does do, importantly what it does not do, and what protections are in place. And we want to ensure the public have a good level of information and can have confidence police use these tools. So I'm going to introduce a number of officers from Hertfordshire Constabulary. So next to me is Superintendent Jamie Fowler, and on the screen are Chief Inspector Chris Rutter and Sergeant Andrew Thomas, and they'll be taking us through more detail about how the technology works and how it's going to be used going forward in Hertfordshire. So I'm going to turn first of all to Superintendent Jamie Fowler to talk us through why this technology is going to be used and how it works.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give a brief overview, and then Chief Inspector Rutter will go into a presentation. I'm going to start by saying I understand people's nervousness. I understand that with any technology. I have experienced this before. I've just spent 20 years in the Met, and the Met has started using facial technology to really good effect. They've been taking offenders off that ultimately would not have been caught otherwise. And I think that is, we have to be realistic. We live in a world now where there are a number of wanted people. People are transient, they move around, they drive around, and therefore the days of your local officer knowing who's wanted and walking up and down the high streets, those days unfortunately are gone, and we have to make use of the technology to make sure that we haven't got those offenders walking the street. So the offences we're looking at primarily are theft, sexual offences, violent offences, drug offences, firearms and weapons, stalking, fraud, criminal damage, kidnap, human trafficking. And I think all of us would probably say, I don't want those people walking around the street. And as a resident of Hertfordshire, I certainly don't want them walking around the street, and we need to make use of technology with that. But naturally with that, we have to have the right safeguards in place. So I've been a police officer 20 years. What I do know is humans make a lot of mistakes. It's human nature. But if you look at this technology, and Chris will go into it, it's somewhere between 1 in 10,000, 1 in 60,000 are what we would call false positives, where someone will be flashed up as, yeah, we think they're wanted. And actually, that is a really, really small percentage. And I assure you, even with the best of intentions, officers will be significantly higher in the error margin that they make. But that's not to say someone flashes up and my officers are going to jump on them. They are going to literally speak to the person involved, look to confirm their identity, and look to see whether that is a false positive. It's not an absolute, right, you're now going to be arrested. I would expect my officers to engage, explain the process, be courteous, explain why we're doing it, and then look to confirm the identity, to confirm it is who we think it is, and then proceed. So it's really important that we do look, and I know there's myths out there, and I understand the nervousness, and I certainly understand the racial bias concerns, which again Chris will come to. But I am a big fan of this technology, and the reason why is I've seen some of the most horrendous and most violent offenders taken off of the streets of London that otherwise would have been walking around or potentially joining us in our county, and I don't want those people here. They pose a risk to everyone. So I am a fan of this technology, but I'm also the first one to say, if we have any concerns, if at any point we think there's an issue with the technology, or we're not satisfied that the right safeguards in place, we will absolutely pause it and stop right away. I don't believe that's going to be the case, and the technology has been tested, and it's been proven to be incredibly reliable. And I hope that we can move to this be in the future, that we can go to different areas across the county and look to lock up people that ultimately are wanted for serious offences that we wouldn't have locked up otherwise. So I am really a big fan of this, but I totally understand the nervousness. So, Commissioner, I'll hand back to yourself, and then unless there's anything else, we'll go through the agenda.
No, thank you very much for that. And actually, the pilot that was done, I'm sure we'll come onto it in more detail before Christmas, provided some reassurance, didn't it, on those points around things like false positives. I think it was over 50,000 people were seen by the technology during that pilot day, and there wasn't a single false positive, which is actually better than the kind of laboratory tested rate, as I understand it. But I suppose from the perspective of the officers involved in that, how did that pilot go, and how did it inform the work that you were doing and thinking about?
So they were really keen to get involved in the technology. They want to see it used. I think there's a myth out there that it's going to keep pinging people that aren't actually wanted, and people are going to be misidentified and arrested. And I think what it showed, and especially on the day when we went down there, a lot of the public were really positive around this. And when they asked why we're doing it, they were actually all for it. And when we explained the safeguards that were in place, the fact that 50,000 people had their face scanned, which is then deleted right after. Please don't sit there and think that we're doing some sort of conspiracy to record people's data or do some surveillance. We're really not. It's not like that at all. I think they were reassured by the safeguards and what was in place, and they actually said, you know what, this is the right. We have to use technology. We absolutely do, and we have to keep up with that. And I'm convinced that this sort of technology is probably the future, and other forces are using it. And if we can use it to the best effect, to lock up the right people and keep people in the community safe, then absolutely we need to go down that avenue.
Thank you very much for that update. I'm going to hand over now to Chief Inspector Chris Rutter to go through in a bit more detail how the technology works. Chief Inspector, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you both. You can see the slides are on the screen, so I'll get started. Just to introduce myself, I'm Chief Inspector Chris Rutter. I've been charged with leading the live facial recognition delivery within Herts on a tactical and operational level. So that has sort of that has been my project for the last sort of 3 months. So we will get started if we can. Charlotte, next page. So I'm going to talk through briefly what is live facial recognition, what is a watch list, and I'll explain all this terminology, how live facial recognition works, the bias and discrimination elements, data retention, performance, and what next for live facial recognition in Hertfordshire. So this is a bit of a publicly disseminated PowerPoint I've put together with a bit of an information piece, and then if we have the time, I'll hopefully, to allay some fears, I'll show you exactly the PowerPoint that I will deliver alongside the operational briefing to the officers on the ground on the day of any specific deployment. Next page, please, Charlotte. So there are 3 different types of facial recognition technology that can be deployed. Live facial recognition, which we were talking about here, retrospective facial recognition, and operator initiated facial recognition. In Hertfordshire, we're not using retrospective or operator initiated at the moment, so I'm not going to go into any of that in any depth, partially because I'm not an expert on it. Nor are we looking to use it at the moment. So it will concentrate on live facial recognition. Next page, please. So how does it work? It works by comparing a human face to a digital image against a database. And that database is called a watch list. So what it will do, it will look at key facial features and create a mathematical representation of your face. So loads of different data points all over your face. And then what it will do, once the camera sees it, and what it will do is compare that to images held within a watch list. As Mr. Fowler has alluded to, this watch list is made up of people wanted for serious sexual offences, for violent offences, for shoplifting, for theft, burglary, whatever it may be. Anyone who is shown as wanted within Hertfordshire Constabulary or shown as arrest ready on our crime systems. And then we will compare that against the images seen by the camera as it scans faces. So, as the boss has alluded to, the best way to think about live facial recognition is that it is a lifetime aid to the police officers to be able to identify the images of individuals who are wanted by police. So we complement the use of the live facial recognition cameras through super recognizers. And what super recognizers are individuals who've gone through significant rigorous testing to show that they have a particularly strong memory when it comes to recognizing faces. So what would happen is that the watch list is compared against that facial image. If there is a match, that will come to the super recognizer, who will quality assure that match. Next page, if you can. So the watch list isn't a rolling document. Every new deployment has a new watch list, and the team within the intelligence department will build that. It takes about a week to build in advance, and that's how we deploy it, and that's in line with national APP and guidance. So the watch list for deployment is made of people who are wanted, as I've mentioned, both by police and the courts, or subject to court orders. So for future deployments, we're going to look for to include registered sex offenders or prolific offenders on our watch list to be able to make sure conditions are being adhered to, and so on and so forth. Unless you're on the watch list, you cannot be matched. And when the technology finds a match, an instant alert is generated. And then, as I've mentioned, alerts are verified by the operator, in our case, super recognizers. Next page, please. So deployments. The nature of deployment should be informed by the force's policing requirements and a use case for LFR. And that's what we try to do with all our deployments. They are targeted, intelligence-led, and time-bound and geographically limited. So some examples of where we foresee using them within Hertfordshire moving forward. Obviously, we've got Slam Dunk Festival in Hatfield, where there's a significant amount of phone theft-related crime. Stevenage in North Herts there, an article from 2024 about sexually predatory behaviour. And then in relation to football as well, so Watford versus Luton, where we've had significant disorder. These are some of the deployments we would consider moving forward to best reduce crime and protect people. Next page, please. So what does it feasibly look like? Well, on the image there, you can see a clearly marked police van. This is a Met Police van for an example with cameras on the top. So it's visibly marked, as is the area around it. So it'll be well signed around the area, and the cameras are hardwired to a server in the van. And what that means is the server is connected to a standalone laptop in the van, and it's not connected to police systems. So the watch list is populated onto a USB stick, plugged into the van, and it's all self-contained within that van. So in terms of data protection, it's very secure. And the technology that we are adopting at the moment through the use of Bedfordshire Police, because we are currently using Bedfordshire Police's LFR vans, we do not yet own our own vans, is NeoFace facial recognition technology. The laptop within the van is connected to smartphone devices which notify officers out of the van of any known matches. Thank you. Next page. So if the NeoFace technology finds a possible match, an alert is generated. And then, as I've mentioned there, if the officer has reasonable grounds to suspect that the images are the same, they may wish to engage. And as Mr. Fowler has alluded to, that won't be an engagement through a particularly disproportionate use of force. That will be simply speaking to the individual to confirm or negate whether they are wanted for an offence as we may believe. It's very much the same as if an officer had a particularly strong memory for faces and saw an individual on the street and therefore chose to engage with them. This is no different. So, as I've said, that officer will explain why we've chosen to speak to them and give them informational leaflets. Persons not included on the watch list cannot be identified, and the images and biometric data of those who do not cause an alert are immediately deleted and cannot be retrieved. That's really important because, as Mr. Ash Edwards alluded to earlier, our initial trial saw 50,000 faces scanned. They are deleted immediately because, as we've alluded to, there were no false positives or false negatives from that trial. Next page. So, as Mr. Fowler's alluded to, there's naturally some apprehension around the use of live facial recognition in so far as potential gender and ethnicity bias. So, studies from the National Physical Laboratory have sort of given an independent analysis of the technology, and that is specific to the NeoFace technology, which we adopt within Hertfordshire. And I think the key point there is that the study finds that if settings are at if the algorithm is at a specific setting, there is no statistical significance between demographic performance, and I think that's really important that independent study has demonstrated that finding. So no statistical significance between demographic performance. That algorithm in question, I've seen we had a question about this, but that's that setting in terms of the sensitivity is set at 0.6. So with 0.6, whilst we may miss some positives, there's about 1 in 10,000, as the boss said, 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 60,000 chance for false positive. Next page. And everything obviously involves a human intervention. The operator in the van will notify the officers on the ground of any alert, and it will be for the officers to make decision as to whether to engage with that individual or not. So as I've sort of alluded to there, data retention. So we don't share the biometric data with any third parties. It is all self-contained within the van in a closed system. If an alert is generated, the biometric data will be deleted within 24 hours. So that if there is a wanted individual who is seen by the camera, that will be deleted within 24 hours. And the CCTV footage, which is generated from the cameras, will be deleted within 31 days. And as we have done previously, all LFR results will be published on our Herts Police website. So moving forward, so as I've mentioned, Bedfordshire Police, who we are in collaboration with, have successfully bought 2 LFR vans, and they are currently in use, and they've been with them since May 2025. So each van requires 3 staff, so outside officers to be deployed on foot, and then the operator. We hope to continue working with live facial recognition moving forward, and we will look to deliver for the people of Hertfordshire ultimately. If the technology works for us, and if the public want us to continue to do so, we will. And we genuinely believe in the ability of the technology to keep the people of Hertfordshire safe. And the safeguards I hope I've shown are in place, and ultimately every deployment is authorised by an officer of the rank of superintendent. So Mr. Fowler has authorised as well. So there are significant safeguards from a policing perspective in relation to this. I do have another PowerPoint which I will show to officers. There is significant safeguards in place, and we do have a lot of data protection impact assessments, community impact assessments, authorization forms, and the likes, which the Intel team put a lot of work into. So I'd also like to just show quickly, if I have the time, a quick PowerPoint which I would show to every officer on every deployment that we use facial recognition technology, and I'm going to fly through this. But I'm more than happy to disseminate the slide. So what I talk to the officers about is actually the fundamentals as I've discussed with you here today. So image recorded by the camera, face detected, compared against the watch list, engagement made by a police officer, decision by the operator, and a possible match view by the operator. And this is what it feasibly could look like. So the zonal recognition on the two vans is shown as of that. In green are members of the public, and the officers who would be engaging are the ones in blue there. So that is sort of a visual of how it could operate on a typical high street. So I will make sure I really stress the importance of unconscious bias when it comes to making decisions with the officers, because ultimately that is not avoidable. But if we are aware of that, then we can act to mitigate any risks that may cause. I'll remind them of their obligations under the Human Rights Act, some of which are there, and their powers. So here's a few Q&As. So if a person decides not to walk through the detection zone, that's absolutely their right. We have no legal power to force an individual to walk through an area in which we have live facial recognition cameras present. That's not to say that we won't engage with an individual who we deem to be making suspicious activity. In a similar way to if an officer was walking down the street and there was a member of the public acting suspiciously, we may choose to have a conversation with that individual. That's part of policing, and this is no different. So if an individual walks past the detection zone is not on the watch list, immediately deleted, as I've mentioned. If it's on the CCTV, it's deleted within 31 days. And if they're on the watch list, it's deleted within 24 hours, as I've discussed. Person cannot be identified or refuses to identify themselves. That doesn't constitute a criminal offence, and you may be justified to take any action you wish and have lawful basis for doing so. So if we can't confirm your identity, that's not necessarily grounds for any arrest, and would not be even in the absence of live facial recognition technology. If they're wearing face covering, again, the officers should form the conclusion that person conduct was suspicious, and then at that point they may have policing powers to identify that individual. Indicates a positive match. As I mentioned, the technology is highly capable, but an alert is not an identification. An alert is what the technology does. An identification is what a human does, and they must have that honestly held belief around their decision making. Thank you. So ultimately, why we're using this, we want to build a rapport with people, and we are open to scrutiny. For those who were present at the trial in Broxbourne, and the van was open. We were allowing members of the public in to have a look at the technology, to see what we're doing, to understand it, to answer any questions. And for us, this is all about trust and confidence in what we do. Ultimately, we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't feel like it could protect the public of Hertfordshire. And ultimately, that's what we want to achieve. No, thank you all for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Chief Inspector, thank you for going through those slides, and I think the kind of transparency around the briefing that you give to officers in a deployment is really useful in terms of understanding the kind of guidance that frontline officers are being given around those deployments. So thank you for that. I'm going to turn to Sergeant Andrew Thomas, who's going to pick up some of the concerns around disproportionality and some of the concerns around bias that come through. Sergeant Thomas, thank you. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, for those that don't know me, my name is Sergeant Thomas, or Tomo as everyone calls me. I am the chair of the Herts Black and Asian Police Association, and I also sit on the National Committee for the National Black Police Association. So in terms of my role within this, obviously I've seen the national concerns around some of the disproportionality and the bias that has been presented nationally with some of these deployments, and the National Black Police Association has been looking into it as well. So I was really interested when I was asked to come on board with this and get involved and see how we can limit that and lower that in Hertfordshire. And I suppose what I'm not going to do is talk about the technology side of things. So I'm not an expert on the technology. However, I've been reassured that the technology that we're using, the settings that we're using, will mean that the false positives will be very slim, if not any. So I've been really sure about that. But what I'm going to talk about is what we're doing to make sure that we are going to deal with any unconscious bias from officers, because that's where we would see any issues if there was to be any. As Mr. Rutter has mentioned, the technology isn't going to be the one that's arresting anybody that's wanted, etc. It's going to be the officers on the ground. So we've involved the Race Inclusion Board, which is a group of black community members from across Hertfordshire who hold the constabulary to account and help them in the race action plan. So we've involved those, and they're going to be attending on the day as well to look at the software and the vans and the officers that are there, and they've been invited to ask any questions that they have in relation to this and be involved in any of the meetings. In addition to that, we're going to make sure that we have a wide representation of officers on the ground on the day that are on this operation. So it's not just going to be officers from a certain demographic there, and we're going to be monitoring the results of this as well from an internal point of view. So not just as organisationally, but we've involved Herts Black and Asian Police Association involved in that as well. So in short, I'm really confident that the human element to this and the officer element to this has been captured really well, and I think a lot of the problems that have been had nationally is because they haven't done that, and we're one of the very few constabularies that has said, you know what, we want to come out in front of this and we want to involve our underrepresented communities internally. So yeah, I can't comment much on the technology because I'm not the expert there. Mr. Rutter is, but the people side of things is something I'm really excited about, and I think we're getting very right with these deployments.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Thomas, for that. And I agree with you. I think the care and sensitivity and transparency with which the constabulary has approached it, I think, is really important and welcome. And I think that kind of as an ongoing thing, I think will considerably help in terms of that public confidence aspect, which is integral to this kind of technology. Thank you. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email into my office, herts-pcc.gov.uk, and we'll make sure that the relevant teams get those and provide a response. I'll wrap up by thanking Superintendent Fowler, Chief Inspector Rutter and Sergeant Thomas for their contributions and the information that they've shared. I think the transparency and explanations that they've provided has been really helpful. And I'll just reiterate what's been said around, please do go and see the deployments when they take place. They are very open to the public, and so if you want to see them in operation and get the officers on the ground to talk you through it in a bit more detail, that offer has been made and it is absolutely there.